let's play a game of what if. What if one of the biggest turning points in world history just didn't happen? We're going to dive into a world where the incredible civilizations of the Americas were never colonized, and their story just kept unfolding. It's a fascinating thought experiment.
Just try to picture it for a second. A world where the Aztec, the Maya, the Inca, and literally hundreds of other distinct indigenous cultures are still thriving right now.
You know, their cities growing into massive modern hubs, their languages becoming global languages of trade and art, and their philosophies helping to shape the way the entire planet thinks. So what would that world look like? It's a huge question, right? And to even begin to answer it, we've got to rewind the clock. We have to understand what the Americas were actually like before everything changed. All right, let's set the stage. The old idea of a vast, empty America before 1492? That's a complete myth. The reality was a world that was buzzing with people, with power, and with incredible complexity.
Okay, check this out. It's a real eye-opener. Back in 1500, the Americas were home to about 65 million people. Now, to put that in perspective, Europe and Africa were both sitting at around 80 million. So we're not talking about a sparse landscape, we're talking about continents on a very similar human scale.
And this population wasn't spread out in tiny villages. Oh no, the Americas had massive urban centers. Take the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. This place was an absolute masterpiece of engineering, a city built on a lake that was home to over 200,000 people. That's as big or even bigger than Paris or Milan at the exact same time.
So you might be asking, how on earth did they feed all those people? Well, this is where their genius just blows you away. The Aztecs created these incredible floating gardens called chinampas. And get this system was so ridiculously efficient, it could support 6 people per acre. For comparison, the most advanced farming in Asia, intensive rice farming, could only support 1 person per acre. That's a 6-to-1 difference. Amazing!
So we've got this picture of a vibrant, innovative, and populous world. Now we get to the moment where history splits, our point of divergence.
When Europeans arrived, it brought conquest. Sure, for gold and God, as the quote says. But it also brought something invisible and far more deadly: disease. The people of the Americas had zero immunity. The result was what's now called the Great Dying, a demographic collapse that killed up to 90% of the population in some areas. It's a number that's almost impossible to comprehend.
And this right here, this is our big what if. What if that catastrophe never happens? What if those tens of millions of people survive? Their societies stay strong. Their cities keep growing. What happens next?
Well, with their societies intact, their technology would have just kept evolving, but on a totally different path, building on the incredible foundation they already had.
And I really want to be clear here, this list isn't a fantasy of what they might have invented. This is stuff they already had. We're talking about advanced metallurgy, plant-based anesthetics, vulcanized rubber, yes really, mind-boggling suspension bridges, and even freeze-drying. This was their starting line.
Let's just focus on one of those for a second. The concept of zero. You know, the number that makes all of modern mathematics and computing possible? Cultures like the Olmec and Maya figured it out completely on their own, way before it was common knowledge in Europe. That's a massive intellectual achievement.
And of course, there's their agricultural power. I mean, 3 of the top 5 foods that feed the entire planet today, corn, potatoes, and cassava, all came from the Americas. In this alternate history, that agricultural strength would be the engine for powerful, independent, and growing nations.
Okay, so you have these strong, populous, innovative nations. What happens when they step onto the global stage as equals? Well, the world map and the global culture would look totally different.
Instead of a world dominated by a handful of European empires, you'd have a truly multipolar world. Just imagine it. Languages like Nahuatl or Quechua could be the languages of international business. Science wouldn't come from just one tradition, but from many parallel streams of thought, all learning from each other. The entire global balance of power would be fundamentally different.
Thinking about this alternate world isn't just a sci-fi exercise. It really forces us to confront the sheer scale of what was lost in our own history.
A world shaped equally by these cultures would probably be guided by very different values. Think about core principles in many indigenous worldviews, like interconnectedness and living in balance with nature. What if those ideas had been shaping global policy for the last 500 years? How might that have changed our relationship with the planet?
This quote really gets to the heart of it. This thought experiment lets us see a completely different path humanity could have taken. one where hundreds of complex societies just got to keep writing their own stories.
Now, this alternate timeline wouldn't be a perfect utopia, of course. It would have its own conflicts, its own challenges. But it would have been a richer, more diverse, and more complex world. Thinking about it really forces us to ask what knowledge, what technologies, and what ways of seeing the world did we lose? And what can that lost world still teach us about our own?